With Republicans drawing themselves more favorable congressional maps ahead of the midterms, Democrats will likely need a strong turnout advantage to win back the House. According to the Cook Political Report, if Democrats and Republicans split the current toss-up races evenly, Republicans would narrowly hold on to their House majority. But early signs show the redistricting fight may be energizing voters more than Republicans expected. In South Carolina's recent runoff elections, early voting reached levels typically seen only in presidential years. In South Carolina's 6th congressional district, represented by Congressman James Clyburn, turnout jumped by more than 50% despite an uncontested primary. That surge was driven largely by black voters who make up roughly 60% of registered Democrats in South Carolina. And nationwide, in the 20 states which have held a major statewide primary for both Democrats and Republican candidates, Democrats have cast roughly 4 million more primary ballots than Republicans. As House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries told colleagues, quote, Republican extremists will not meaningfully benefit from their scandalous gerrymandering scheme. Quite the opposite. Democratic enthusiasm and resolve have grown more intense. The failed GOP majority will not be able to gerrymander themselves back into power. Joining us now, Congressman Al Green of Texas, member of the Congressional Black Caucus. Congressman Green, thank you very much for coming to the last word. The first word. Weekend.
The first word of the day.
Well, you know, I had the last word on my mind because I interviewed Congressman James Clyburn on the last word, and I asked him about the Washington Post story that is the basis of this conversation that showed that Republicans trying to gerrymander is juicing Democratic primary turnout among African Americans. But I asked Congressman Clyburn whether he has concerns that Democrats will be able to take advantage of this enthusiasm, because the story quoted Mr. Hamilton, who voted in a primary but didn't vote in a runoff election because he couldn't get to the polls. Listen to what Congressman Clyburn had to say when I asked him if he was concerned about that.
The fact of the matter is that we, on our side of the aisle, have allowed people to demonize what it takes to get people like Mr. Hamilton to the polls. We can talk all we want. We can have as many TV ads that you've got out there, as many radio ads. We can write as many letters as we can possibly write, send out cards. But if we don't put in place the kind of boots on the ground mechanisms to get people like him to the polls, we are going to pay for it dearly. No, we have not done enough in recent years. In the last presidential election, we saw it in Pennsylvania, we saw it up in Michigan, and I was sounding a warning. And I'm sounding a warning here tonight.
And so Congressman Green, do you share Congressman Clyburn's concern and worry that this enthusiasm among Democrats and black Democrats in particular is not going to be taken advantage of by the party?
Well, first, allow me to thank you for having me on and to give appreciation for your opening commentary where you talked about we the people, because truly we are the we and we the people. Of course, Congressman Clyburn is a sage. He is a person that we look to for wisdom. He has the experience, he has the knowledge. He truly is a person who makes a difference in every conversation. And yes, we do have to concern ourselves with putting the boots on the ground. And to be very candid with you, a lot of putting boots on the ground has to do with money in pockets. We've got to show people that we want to put money in their pockets, but we also have to have the money to do what others do when they put boots on the ground. They have the ability to organize, and sometimes you have to have money to help with that process, lawfully expenditures, I might add. You also have to advertise in the black newspapers, use black radio. You cannot expect black people to do with little what others do with much. So it's entirely possible for us to succeed. I believe we will succeed, but we've got to make sure that we don't disassociate ourselves with the actual rationale, the actual reason why people are successful with putting boots on the ground.
You know, speaking of boots on the ground, yesterday we saw white supremacists marching in Washington, D.C., covering their faces. You can see them now on your screen, Congressman. And this is not the first time that we've seen this in this country. It's not the first time as Donald Trump as president that we've seen it in this country. And I want to play something. Secretary Doug Burgum, the Interior Secretary, was on CNN just a bit ago. And listen to what he said when asked about these folks.
What they stand for is nothing that I could possibly agree with, but one of the foundational principles of the United States, which makes democracy messy, is free speech. And there are plenty of things that I see that I might personally find offensive, irreprehensible. But in America, free speech is allowed, and this is by the whole spectrum of things. I mean, we're a country where someone can run and be elected saying that they're a communist, but yet this is what our nation has stood against and fought for, because we're about life and liberty. We're not about death and tyranny.
To be very clear, I have not seen one person elected on Democratic or Republican side who say they're a communist, to be very clear. So that is not true what the Secretary is saying there. There's a both sidisms that's happening in this part of the conversation. I don't like what these big loser racists are saying, but there's also this other side that folks need to look at too. When these two things are not equal, there's a lack of clarity talking about these things, and it allows for the folks who are on the side of the masked men to feel like it may be okay for them to continue spouting what they spout.
Well, I think that we have to concern ourselves with people who choose to hide their faces when they're in public spaces. I've lived long enough to know what this is all about. I've celebrated my 19th birthday 4 times, and I'm now into my 5th 19th. I believe we have to concern ourselves with what we know is the case, but we don't always see the evidence of it. I want them to have their free speech. Let them march and let people see that this level of racism and hate still exists, that the Klan has only metamorphosed now. They become a little bit more intelligent about how they display themselves, but they're still persons with the same mentality. And that is a mentality that would divide us, prevent us from uniting, prevent us from working together. They believe in a supremacy of one race in this country. I don't support that. And I don't think most Americans support that. So yes, let them march. Now, with reference to how this is going to have an impact and whether this is something that we might see emanating from both sides in some way that is unimaginable. Look, the impact of this is going to be felt by some people who will agree with them, but I still have enough in the country to think that most people don't approve of people who would parade with a mask on to disguise themselves while shouting something associated with white supremacy. I don't think people will agree with that. I think that we have a duty to talk about who they are and what they're doing. And when we do that, it gives us the opportunity to educate the public and get people to understand that what was is still here. It's just that it's a little bit different. I want to mention one more thing, if I may. They're exercising their free speech. Just a few days ago, a major in the military exercised his free speech in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Major Watson. I was there with him. I was there when they marched him up those steps. I could not stay with him because if I had, then he wouldn't have been arrested. I would legitimize his being where he was. So I chose to allow him to do that which he chose to do. And that was to say to the country, I'm a member of the military. I'm a major, 17 years, a person with a good record. I stand against what's happening in this country. He stood against what's happening with our military. And he said, impeach. Now, that's a word that we can't use too often, because if you do, people won't allow you to have a voice. They will decide when impeachment is a word that can be said, and then you can join them. But if you're part of the avant-garde, you can't do it. This is an avant-garde person, an avant-garde personality. He stood there. Jessica Denson, with the Impeachment Coalition, helped to coordinate this effort. These are people who are making a difference, too. He was exercising his right to free speech, but there were consequences. And you have to be prepared to suffer the consequences when you do this. The consequence was he's been arrested, and he has now been taken to a place where he is going to have to answer for his actions. But friends,
Congressman Green, before we're out of time, because you bring up the issue of...
Let me finish this point, if I may. I'm a liberated Democrat. On some issues, it is better to stand alone than not stand at all. He stood alone. Rosa Parks stood alone. Those radicals, rebels out there in the street, they're not standing alone. They're out there together. They wouldn't come out singularly and do what they're doing. So we have to understand that there are consequences. And the consequences for us will be if we allow this kind of behavior to manifest itself in such a way as we don't respond to it as you're doing today, and I commend you, then we may find that it will propagate and it will have adverse consequences that we may not be able to negotiate our way out of. Sorry.
Before we are out of time, very quick, you are one of the lone Democrats still calling for the impeachment of Donald Trump. You filed a resolution at the end of last year. House leadership has made it clear that they don't agree with that strategy, that they feel like it's a distraction and it would be a mistake to forge ahead with it, even if Democrats took back the majority. Do you think Hakeem Jeffries is making a mistake?
I don't think Hakeem Jeffries is making a mistake. I think that we are entitled to our opinions. He has his opinion. I have an opinion. And here is my opinion. If a reckless, ruthless, lawless president disregards the Constitution, takes the country to war without the consent of Congress, without conferring with Congress, when a reckless, ruthless, lawless president commits impeachable acts, then I think that we bring articles of impeachment. And I don't think we have to wait until we have a majority to do that which is right. Dr. King said the time is always right to do that which is right. It is the right time for us to bring articles of impeachment. And if God spares me, and I believe that my health will allow me to be spared as I currently exist, I'm going to bring articles of impeachment again against this president. And I want the other members of the House to do what they believe appropriate. These are questions of conscience, and every member has a right to express his or her vote by way of conscience. My conscience dictates that we cannot allow this kind of behavior to go unchecked. Posterity has to know that there was some among us who were willing to take a stand and sacrifice all so that we could protect the rest. I stand for justice. I stand for impeachment of a reckless, ruthless, lawless president.